Welcome back to the Sports Business Take podcast, your home for sports industry news with a little personality. I'm Paul Hine. He is Zach Creekmore. And today we are joined by Calvin Christoforo, broadcast and media relations coordinator for the Cedar Rapids Colonels, the high A team of the Minnesota Twins. How are you today, Calvin?
Good. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, of course. So could you explain a little bit about your role and kind of what you do at the Cedar Rapids Colonels to our audience?
Yeah, so essentially a lot. It's kind of a one-man show in the media relations department. So everything from handling media requests to game notes to game preparation to broadcasting the game. So essentially everything that you think of on the media side for a minor league team.
All of it.
Yeah, all of it.
Yeah. So I'm just curious, how many writers are you getting interacting with your team every day?
Writers like beat writers or writers that
beat writers, because you said you were covering media. I assume newspapers and those sorts of things show up.
A lot of news outlets come when they typically have one specific story to cover. This year we had a kid from Iowa, University of Iowa, play on the team, first time since the 80s. We had Iowa's right down the road, a kid from Iowa play on the team, so that was big media coverage. But we really only have one beat writer that goes to every game and shows up and covers the team every single game. But the local outlets, typically TV news stations, they will contact me when they have a specific story, a specific angle they want to cover, that I will help them, set up a time to interview the player or the coach they want to chat with.
Yeah, and in terms of the game notes, I assume you're handing that out to those media outlets that are coming right before the game, like in the press box.
Yeah. It's typically most important for the opposing broadcaster that comes, right? So you're spending a lot of time doing your own game notes. You don't have a ton of time to, look at the other team and prep for the other team per se, but it's kind of all the information you have for the other team is in the game notes they give you, and you give the game notes to them. So it's kind of, you write your stuff on your team, and then you switch, and then you have, information now on both teams.
Right. Awesome. Thank you for explaining that.
Yeah.
Zach, you want to start us off?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've kind of discussed and you shared a little bit, but you do a lot of play-by-play, looking at your resume where you work with Holy Cross, with a couple of other schools. But over both traditional means like radio, like you do with the Minnesota Twins, and also with means like ESPN Plus, which is a totally different scale. At least from my experience, I was recently at the U.S. Open, and I've kind of seen like the production seems very different, at least in terms of that process. I'm not sure if that's your experience or not. That's kind of why I'm asking. So could you describe what that experience is like? What's the differences between the production process in working in the radio versus working on a production process like ESPN Plus?
Well, very different, right? Radio is kind of, run my own commercials on the radio side, depending on, the team and the radio deal that you have with different minor league teams. Some teams have, a board op back in the studio that runs the commercials and breaks and stuff like that. But the way that we have it set up is I run the commercials, I run the breaks. So when we're on the road, in the minor league season, it's just me. When we're at home, we have MILB TV, so we have a production crew at home that, director, producer that cuts the different camera angles and stuff like that. On the TV side, obviously, it's a completely different process. Not too different to what we have our home broadcasts on the MILB TV, but you have a crew, right? You have a bunch of different camera people. You have graphics person, you have audio person, you have director, you have producer, you have, 10, 12 people working on the broadcast, depending on where it is, compared to the radio side. Most nights it's just me alone by myself running the radio stream. So that's really the difference, is the manpower element of you need more than one person to do a good TV broadcast that is multiple cameras and multiple angles and multiple graphics, than compared to the radio side where you can really, can do it with one person. Depending on the radio deal, you can do it with 2 or 3 or whatever it is.
Yeah, always good to have people helping you out and a great staff around you. So just going back to that at-home broadcast, when you're in there, I'm curious because I have done a job shadow. When I was with the Portland Sea Dogs, I job shadowed in the broadcast room with our graphics designer, and she kind of showed me how to put everything on the board. I saw how the broadcast gets produced and, the whole operating room. And I saw a lot of technology when I was in there, MILB computer systems and MLB computer systems. So I'm just curious, how has technology changed the broadcasting industry in your eyes since you started?
Yeah, well, a lot. I mean, minor league baseball and Major League Baseball too have made it a requirement to have the MILB TV stream. That was the first year that it was mandatory, was this year, I believe, because, teams in the Florida State League didn't have broadcasts at home. So now it's a requirement to have a league broadcast. Every team's home game has to be on the TV side of things. So in that element, it's made a world of difference. Some teams used to have radio streams only, and some teams used to have no broadcast at all. Going back to, what your television booth looks like in Portland, I mean, ours is probably very, very similar. Of big room, a lot of TVs, director, producer, and they kind of do a two-part job in one, because they control the audio that goes on the video board and the audio that controls the broadcast. They're running the video board, the in-house PA, the in-house hosts, the graphics that go on the board, the audio that goes on the board, along with all those elements on the broadcast side of things too. So for us, it's a really difficult process. Those guys juggling what you see inside the ballpark and what you see at home too. So it's kind of a tough task those guys have. I'm sure that's similar to other minor league teams, but they run it very successfully on our end. We have one of the, in my opinion, biased opinion, one of the nicer TV streams in our league. So it's always great to be able to go back and watch the highlights from a high quality broadcast that the Colonels provide.
Definitely great to hear the insider insight about how that all goes down. Thank you.
Absolutely. I have to compliment. You've got your radio voice on today. We can already hear it.
Definitely.
So I can see why you work the role you do. So you had mentioned you're a one-man show, right? You're in-house, you're running it. And as someone who's experienced that and done that in the past, it can be something that's really challenging. Is there a way that you rely on other teams? Are there other people that are in other roles that you say, I'm doing this? Is there some way that you can support me, and you bring that and build yourself up by helping others or creating that collaboration, right? We know in minor league especially, many hats have to be worn. So I don't know, are there other teams, other people that you call on and rely on?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a very good social media team. So we have two people that run our social media. One is technically social media, one is technically graphic design. But, when players get awards like that, or not like that, but an award of some sort, I work with them to get the graphic ready to be posted on time. If someone's getting promoted, we'll know sometime before that promotion becomes public. So we'll work with them to get that graphic ready to go. Highlights on the road, kind of a difficult process to post, because you don't want to post the other guy's call. You want to post your own call. So
Of course.
with the TV rights, you got to edit it and slide your call underneath. And our graphic design and our social media people, they really help me out doing that and getting that posted. So in that element, posting highlights takes some time off my plate by letting them do that stuff. Well, I'm trying to work on some other things.
Yeah, as someone who works in social media, I can totally relate to that. I've been that guy who's been cutting that stuff before.
Yeah, there you go.
So just from the media relations standpoint, let's go back to that instead of broadcast. What is the biggest challenge as the media relations coordinator in minor league baseball specifically? Obviously, I have some experience in that landscape, and it can be challenging sometimes. You're not getting as much attention as, maybe a major league team or, a professional team at the highest level. So what do you think the difference is, and what's the biggest challenge?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of differences. You're working with minor league guys compared to major league guys. Cedar Rapids, our market has a very good following. People pay attention to the team. They keep up with the team, which is really good. I think the biggest challenge is, I don't know how to phrase this, but keeping the interest in the Twins in the back of your mind while keeping the interest of the Colonels in the back of your mind. So you don't want to be, a ton of airtime to something that the Twins don't want to have, out. So it's keeping the interest of the parent club in mind when you're trying to promote your own team. So I think that's
right, because they're interconnected.
Difficulty of finding that balance sometimes of, okay, we can do this, it might help us, but will the fellas in Minnesota like that? It's kind of a balance sometimes.
Yeah. Of course, and that's part of, I guess, balancing engagement and views with, what the needs of the company are.
I think, Paul, you made a good point of, it is an interconnected business. We're looking at a place where sports are these growing things. I don't know if you follow soccer at all, but I'm big into soccer, and we see group ownership groups taking over. So if you're looking at the Man City group, you've got Man City, Girona, a bunch of other clubs, right? whether they be in Australia, they're in all these different places, but all their interests are interconnected. So seeing that in the American setting is also super interesting. So thank you for sharing. Going to something a bit more personal, and it's just a bit of a funny bit. We mentioned before getting on the call, you're from Maine, grew up in the Saco area. You attended Thornton Academy, which is really important, okay? Both Paul and I had Thornton Academy AD, and now, I guess, joint author of a book, Stolen Seasons, Gary Stevens. We both had him as professor. I don't know if he was the AD during your time at Thornton, but I would love to hear your take on Gary. I think he's an absolute legend.
Great guy.
The interim AD at St. Joe's.
Yes!
Okay, you've been following.
Of course. No,
You've been following.
Stevens is great. We worked together because I did, a lot of TV stuff at TA. I was an athlete at TA. He has followed my stuff. I mean, he even to this day will sometimes retweet and comment some stuff that I'm a part of. So no, he's great. He loves Thornton Academy. He bleeds maroon and gold. He bleeds athletes or former athletes who have gone on to do different things. He follows up with them. So he's great. I've heard about him teaching at St. Joe's, and now I'm happy to see he's the interim AD at St. Joe's. His retirement was very short-lived. Sad to see him leave TA, but no, he's awesome.
Yeah,
I didn't know he left TA.
I didn't know that either. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, no, he retired. He retired from TA, so that's why I was surprised that he went to St. Joe's as the interim AD. But no, he retired from TA. But you can't keep him out of the game for too long.
I didn't know that.
You can't. No, he's got that desire. He always has. And great to hear that you have an awesome relationship with him. That he's still. It speaks to his character. He's an awesome guy.
What a small world, too. Honestly. Going back to radio, I just want you to kind of take us inside of the world of radio. Obviously, you, like Zach mentioned earlier, you got the radio voice. So how does it get produced? What's involved in terms of equipment? And how does one become a radio talent? For people that want to get into this, how does that career path happen?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, a lot of people tell you the same thing, is get as many reps as possible. And radio is the easiest thing to do that, because you can go to any game. I mean, you can go to whoever UMass is going to lose to in football this weekend, sit in the stands, and do play-by-play for that game, right?
I can't comment because I have to film that game on Saturday.
Yeah. So you can go to UMass Buffalo and call play-by-play of the pick six in the end zone, right? So, and you can do that.
The homecoming game this weekend. Hopefully, we got something up our sleeves.
They're playing.
They're playing Central Connecticut State.
Okay, FCS school. You got a shot. But it's a thing where it's easy to do because you can go to any game and sit in the stands, right? And just take your phone like this and do it, into your phone. So it's reps and it's quality of reps. I'm a big fan of doing something and then sending it to someone you respect and have them critique it and send it back to you. That's really what the Syracuse broadcasting fabric is, made of, is doing something and then sending it to an upperclassman and have them critique it and send it back to you. That's really what I'm, a big part of, and how to get better on the radio side of things. And like I said, radio is the easiest to get better at because you can do it all by yourself. You don't need a TV crew, production crew to help you out and make it, something about you. You can do it anywhere. You can take your phone to Hadlock Field and call the seventh inning in the stands, right? And take that as tape. As far as equipment goes, depending on, the team you work for, we have a Comrex unit, which helps you connect to radio stations. I don't know if you guys have any experience with what a Comrex is, but you program the station, it'll have, different ways to program it in. So you program it into the system, and you just click connect, essentially how it works once they enter in and you're connected to the station.
And you're live at that point, right?
Well, depending on your process, because the board op back in the radio station can still have you down, and you can be talking to him even when you're connected to the station, and then he can prop you up or she can prop you up, depending on what your radio system looks like. This year we didn't have a radio deal, so we went through Stream Guys, which every minor league team's required to have some sort of Stream Guys connection. So when you Google listen live to the Somerset Patriots, you'll find their thing. And if it's through stream guides, it'll just play. If it's not, it'll kick you to wherever the radio thing is. But our stream guys is plugged into the Comrex, so that's kind of our one big piece of equipment we use to run the broadcast.
Interesting. Yeah, I feel like a lot of people don't know a lot about the radio world, so definitely interesting to hear kind of how you get connected even in the first place to doing that.
Yeah.
And hearing about the feedback that you were getting from upperclassmen, that's really awesome. It's always nice to have another set of eyes on your stuff. Personally, me, I always like, if I'm putting together a video for the athletic department, I'll ask my roommate, like, oh, does this look good? Do you like this music or whatever? So it's always nice to get another set of eyes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's,
Absolutely.
like I said, that's what the, where I went to school at Syracuse, and that's really what it's about there. And that's how the improvement happens from your first day to your last day.
No, it's powerful. It's powerful mentorship, which is such a key thing that I don't think people struggle to tap into. It's a big thing of just asking, and I think even for myself. So I appreciate you sharing just that impact. So definitely something we can encourage our viewers to go and say, hey, don't be afraid to ask that person that's like, hey, I did this. Can you check it out? And being that free spirit of just like, hey, I'm wanting to learn and grow and take that input, which is super powerful. So thank you for sharing. You've been on both sides of the media process, both the kind of management, the coordination, but also as the talent. How do you transition between the roles? How does your role as talent influence your work as manager and coordinator? And I understand your manager and coordinator role, maybe you're the one-man show and you're also the talent, but I'm curious to hear your take.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, what you're trying to get to is what I find myself thinking about is when I was a student, I would go through the athletic department to get interviews with the athletes and with the coaches. And now I'm kind of on the other side. I'm the pseudo SID of the team, which is not the terminology in the professional world. But working with the SIDs to get interviews, now being the SID to, facilitate interviews is the divide I think you're kind of looking for. In my minor league role, the management, it's really all just sandwiched into one. Even last year, my first year, was a real interesting thing, just coming from school and being like, okay, people are now asking me for emails. How did I write these emails, and how did it, work out? So how am I receiving these emails as I'm facilitating these interviews? So that was kind of a weird transition from going from the guy looking to talk to Jim Boeheim to the guy that is now being reached out to talk to Walker Jenkins or Noah Cardenas or whoever we had that they wanted to chat with. So that was a really interesting thing for me to go from one side of it to the other side of it really quickly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's super interesting to hear kind of how you just get thrown into that career path and you learn so much as you go along. And obviously broadcasting is going to be your future. So speaking about the future of broadcasting, where do you think broadcasting TV is going to be in 10 years as a broadcaster yourself? Is it in streaming? Is it somewhere else? I want to hear your take on this.
Interesting. Really interesting. I get scared when like Al Michaels' AI gets played in the Olympics, right? I mean, that's scary to me. And I also get scared of, at the high school level, what's the football huddle? The huddle tape is taking over the broadcast. Like, why would we need a broadcast if we can just do the huddle all 22 footage? Which is also scary to me. But I think it's in a good spot. I mean, ESPN Plus has helped out a lot, mainlining streams for, FCS schools and lower Division I schools at smaller conferences that, went through their own conference network. I think ESPN Plus did a great job of bringing that all together in one and having that opportunity to have a one-stop shop for any broadcast you kind of want at the Division I level. Free stuff, they want broadcasters to be broadcasting. So I think it'll continue to move in the right direction. I think streaming is the way forward. I think cable is dying, which is no news to anyone. Although I had a buddy talk about this the other night. He wants to watch the game not 2 seconds delayed because, the streaming is a little behind. You get the alert on your phone when something happens before you see it happen with the streaming, which is kind of annoying.
Or you're checking Twitter and it comes up.
Right?
Yeah.
You get Woj, I guess not anymore, tweeting the pick before it comes in on the draft, which I guess is just him reporting. But I think broadcasts will continue to happen. I think there's going to be more quantity of it, which is good because a lot of people are trying to get into the business, and like me, trying to move up in the business. So I think the more broadcast, the better to give opportunities to the most people as possible.
Definitely, and I'm sure you want to hear your voice displayed on ESPN as much as you can.
Right?
Having done some play-by-play myself, not much, but I did a couple games at St. Joe's. What is one aspect that the viewers at home don't really understand about play-by-play, what the job is and what you do that they don't get to see or appreciate?
I think, it depends on the audience. The prep you do, some people think like, oh, the communication department just handed him a pack of papers and he's reading what they gave them. In that aspect, you're doing a lot of the prep. So the viewers, what they hear and what they see, come from you and your own homework that you do.
Yep.
And then sometimes even during the broadcast, you're juggling a bunch of things depending on the level. Like the producer could be talking in your ear while you're talking, and like that's a difficult thing to maneuver. And sometimes you're looking for something and looking down at something, and you don't really see, what happened. But I think the biggest thing is broadcasting is, I don't know how to put this, but whatever the viewer is seeing is not necessarily the angle that you're watching. So like, if they have a close-up angle, you don't suddenly get closer and you're not staring at the monitor the whole time. You're still high up watching, the main game broadcast. So sometimes when the viewer's at home, like, how do you miss that? It's right there on the screen. Like, you're still in the press box. You've been, teleported to where the feed is. And sometimes in live time, you're not looking at the monitor. If there's a replay, you'll probably kick back to the monitor and say, oh yeah, I can see this now. But in live time, sometimes the person broadcasting the game is not necessarily seeing the exact angle that the person at home is seeing.
Right, of course, because it's all laid out in front of you as opposed to looking at it on the screen. That makes a ton of sense. Definitely. I just want you to take us through the producer in your ear process, because I don't think a lot of people know what that's like to have someone talking at them while talking at the same time. So what does that look like? How do you manage that? Is it weird to have somebody talking in your ear while you're talking? Do you just start blurting out what they're saying sometimes?
Well,
how does that process work?
Fear, right? That's the fear. If and you can't talk back to him either, right? Like you can't be like, all right, look at camera 2. Okay, I'm looking at camera 2 because that's on the air.
Right.
You can't do that. At first it's difficult, but once you're used to it, you're used to it. And even with on the radio side, sometimes the producer's talking in your ear while you're talking. So you kind of get through it once you do it a couple of times. And I like, I tell producers and directors, like, don't be afraid to talk in my ear during action because I'm used to it now. I can handle it very easily. But the first couple of times it's trippy, when you have the headset on and they're like,
yeah, I'm sure.
All right. Like what? Right. And sometimes they pop up out of nowhere, like you're mid-sentence and it's silent. So, hey, and that can trip you up. But once you experience it a couple of times, it's rather easy to look past.
Yeah, that makes sense. It must be weird to have somebody mid-thought, be talking to you while you're still trying to finish the thought. So I'm going to ask you our closing question. We ask this to all of our guests. If you could go back to any moment or game in sports history and be involved with it, for you, it would probably be calling it. Which game or event would you want to call and why?
I was going to say 12-year-olds Little League All-Star State Championship Game 3. I would have not swung at those pitches outside. But if we're talking about calling it, an event that I'd like to go back and call is the question.
Yes.
Wow. I would have been like 4, but I would have liked to call the Red Sox Yankees Game 7, 2004.
Yeah,
that would have been fun.
Yeah, that's on my list too.
Red Sox World Series Game 4 that year. Malcolm Butler's interception game. Those would be fun to call. Totally.
Those are perfect. Those will resonate with the New England audience.
Right? There we go.
No, that's great. That's definitely on my list as well. So thank you so much, Calvin, for coming on today. This was great. You're obviously a very personable personality. Obviously, you wouldn't be on radio if you weren't. So thank you so much for answering all of our questions very thoroughly. And for those who are listening, pay attention to the Cedar Rapids Colonels. They are clearly have a great broadcast team, and hopefully we'll have a good season next year. Thank you so much, Calvin, and we'll see you guys next week.